Okay, at this point, I don't know what to believe. It's such a mess with the fights right now. According to many different reports, apparently everyone is pulling out. So, as we know, Ariel Helwani was the main one talking about how Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler might not be happening. He's reported that multiple different times and is saying it's more unlikely now than even before. But the UFC just promoted the fight on their Instagram page. So, I don't know what's going on there with Ariel's report, if it's true or not, because he's the only one reporting that. We'll see if he's correct or not. He also just reported a couple hours ago that the co-main event of UFC 303, Jamahal Hill versus Carlos Ulberg, might also get pulled off the card or at least brought down on the card because they might have another fight as a replacement for the co-main. There's some kind of change happening there, whether the fight is not going to be part at all or they're going to bring the fight down on the card. Ariel structured that a little bit weirdly. It's hard to exactly know what he's trying to say there, but that's what it seems like he's implying. And again, Ariel's the only guy reporting on that. So this is either a huge breaking news coming from him or he's completely wrong on all of this stuff. And I hope that's not the case. I hope Conor is still fighting. I hope Jamahal Hill and Carlos Ulberg is still going to be the co-main event or at least on the card. And according to Ariel as well, they are looking to do Diego Lopes versus Brian Ortega for UFC 303. If that's true, that's a banger, man. That is an insanely good fight. Diego Lopes is a beast of an up-and-comer and definitely going to do great things in his future. I'll get into the fight with Brian Ortega later in the video because there's another piece of news. This is according to many different accounts, many different MMA websites that report on this stuff. There are a lot of reports that Khamzat Chimaev is rumored to have pulled out of his fight with Robert Whittaker. And Mohammed Eskuranov, one of Khamzat's training partners, posted a picture of Khamzat in the hospital bed with Ikram Aliskerov right next to him. That looks really bad, man. He looks very, very sick there, and it's kind of crazy because yesterday, Ikram posted a video of them both training, and Khamzat looked pretty good. Now, it could have been an old video, but it's crazy how quickly he just got sick like that. And during training camp, probably with him more vulnerable, cutting weight and all that stuff, because the fight is supposed to be next week, so he's already losing weight. He's on a sort of diet, maybe making him more vulnerable of getting some kind of sickness. And also, Robert Whittaker posted on his Instagram that he's the kind of guy that will fight anyone, anytime, anywhere. And he also tagged his management group in that as well, which is very interesting. Management group for what? He's waiting for a replacement. What is going on with the month of June for fights? There's been no official statement, especially around the UFC 303 thing. It's just Ariel Helwani talking about that. Now, Ariel's been correct on a lot of different things, but he's also been incorrect on some fight news. And if it's only him getting that scoop, I don't know if any of these rumors or reports are true at this point. There's too much going on, and it's hard for me to believe any of it. It might be denial because the fights in June look so good, and the MMA guys had to rearrange it a bit. If it is in fact true that Khamzat has pulled out, it looks like most fans want to see Ikram Aliskerov step in to fight Robert Whittaker more than anyone else. At least that's what I'm seeing all over social media. Everybody's calling for Ikram to take that spot from Khamzat, which is a bit poetic in a way. You know, it's a bit of a story between them two. Ikram takes Khamzat's spot in a fight that could get him a title shot, and if Ikram beats Robert Whittaker, which would be absolutely insane, the guy's unranked, and imagine him beating someone as great as Whittaker, he might get a title shot after that, which I don't think he would, because he's not the star that Khamzat is. I think Sean Strickland deserves it, but the possibility is at least there. I would think if Ikram were to beat Robert Whittaker, he would need one more win in order to get a title shot after, and maybe he could fight Khamzat. Maybe that gets lined up afterward, but at that point, how can you trust Khamzat if he actually pulled out of this fight? How can you trust him with giving him another big one when he's still ranked on the lower end of the top 10? He's not even a top 5 fighter in the rankings. I think you give Khamzat Paulo Costa next if he pulls out. And whoever pulls out gives the other fighter half of their show purse. That would be actually pretty fitting for that. But I hope Khamzat heals up, man. Speedy recovery. He did have that COVID scare a few years ago, and taking care of his health at this point should be his priority. But I like the Ikram and Robert Whittaker fight if they go with that. I mean, Ikram Aliskerov is a solid, well-rounded fighter. Very good takedown defense. Dangerous striking skills is only getting better every time we see him. Very dynamic with the different kind of techniques that he throws at you. That's an interesting fight, man. I would think Robert Whittaker would beat him, but Whittaker is a bit chinny, man, and Ikram is very aggressive with his power punches, so one wrong exchange for Robert Whittaker and he could get knocked out. I mean, that 1-2 that Ikram put down on Phil Haas was so picture perfect, and the way he annihilated Warley Alves. It's funny naming those guys because they're nowhere near the skill level of Whittaker, not even in the same world of him, but you could definitely see the kind of power that Ikram generates in his shots. But I think Whittaker is more technical and has a better understanding of distance for his striking, which could play a big part in beating Ikram Aliskerov. He's way more experienced, way more crafty. Should be an interesting fight. And we know that Dricus du Plessis was saying that if Whittaker beat Khamzat, or he probably has the same thought if he beats someone like Ikram, he doesn't get a title shot afterward. I understand that because he lost to Dricus, right? One more win, and then he could be right in there for a title shot. But the question is, who does he fight after that? You know, if he beats Ikram, who does Whittaker fight that he hasn't already fought? The loser of Dricus and Adesanya, maybe?
Izzy versus Whittaker sounds kind of played out at this point, to be honest.
And then regarding the Jamahal Hill and Carlos Ulberg thing, so if the fight's off, the fight's off. Whatever. Did one fighter pull out and they can't get a replacement? I mean, we're like 2 weeks away from the fight. I don't know who would step in on short notice like that if one of the fighters pulled out. I would think that Yuri Prochazka would be a guy who would step up, but he might be getting a title shot. So, and for those wondering why would Yuri get a title shot again against Pereira? Is because of the whole Uncle Live situation. Uncle Live is saying that he wants to fight Pereira in Abu Dhabi and hasn't really talked too much about fighting anywhere else. And then Pereira's like, I'm not fighting you in Abu Dhabi. You can't just pick the place and the time and the date and all that stuff. You got to be ready to fight the champion. And that's why Pereira said that maybe Yuri Prochazka is the next opponent for him, because Yuri's willing to fight him anywhere at any time. And then Diego Lopes versus Brian Ortega. If that fight is happening, that is one of the better fights at featherweight right now. And dare I say that Diego Lopes beats him? I think the main thing going for Ortega is the fact that he has a great chin. He's very tough. And at this point, he is a veteran at featherweight. You know, the difference of experience between Lopes and Ortega might be the deciding factor in Ortega winning the fight. Like, he won't make as many mistakes as Lopes will. He might get caught early. He might get hurt. Lopes is a very big guy who hits extremely hard. The thing though is he does get wild at times, and I think Ortega thrives in those kind of fights, right? The wilder and dirtier the fight gets, the better Ortega performs. The more technical and composed the fight is, the more his technique is exposed. So it could be a really good scrap for that. And Lopes is fresher. I think he hits a little bit harder than Ortega. He's a little bit bigger than Ortega as well. Both guys have very good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills. I think Ortega's better in that area, but Lopes can definitely hold his own on the ground. I don't know who would win that fight. It's such a good one, man. And it would be 3 rounds if it is on 303. So Lopes has to start throwing those power punches right away, because we've seen Ortega survive 4 rounds of a beating. But I believe, if I remember correctly, he got dropped by Yair Rodriguez. So his chin might be withering away from all the damage on his chin. And Lopes could be the fighter to knock Ortega out.
Max and Volk soften that chin for Lopes to shatter. And most fighters, their chins eventually crack. So,
and if Lopes beats Ortega, 1 fight away from a title shot, which is crazy that this is happening for so many different up-and-comers, if this fight is in fact happening. I mean, if Ikram Aliskerov goes up and fights Robert Whittaker, he has the chance to fight for a title very soon. Same with Diego Lopes if this fight is actually happening. Steve Erceg, like, there's so many different fighters right now who are just jumping the queue in the rankings. Like Umar versus Corey Sandhagen's another one. It's very exciting to see if these young guys can rise to the occasion like Steve Erceg did. If we get to see if Lopes can do the same, Ikram Aliskerov if that fight happens, and Umar Nurmagomedov. So crazy fight news. Well, I can't really say they're news yet. Crazy rumors reported by many different people, and we'll see if any of this is true. Yo, if Ariel Helwani's wrong on all that stuff, my man's got to take a break from reporting, because that's some big fight news that he was just wrong about.